Well, I wanted to take a moment before we jump into today's message. It didn't really feel right or appropriate not to acknowledge that for so many of us, we're walking in today with maybe an extra level of overwhelm or anxiety or fear. Obviously, every week that we walk in, we could take a look at and acknowledge many various things that are going on in our world that are cause for despair and fear and a sense of alarm within us. But I know that for probably most of us, our eyes are on Minneapolis right now. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and create space for however we might show up today, the feelings that we might have, the concerns, the anger, the despair, and just to recognize that if we are going to be on this journey where we're walking each other home, part of that is holding space for all of the ways that we're showing up today, all of the ways that we might be feeling that today. And so I didn't want to just breeze right past that into today's topic. But I do hope that what we talk about today can in some ways point us to a possibility of hope and a possibility of perhaps reflecting on how we can, in our lives, in the spaces that we do have impact, make a difference and really create community where that is possible. And so I wanted to start today with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. We celebrated Martin Luther King Day on Monday, and this is an excerpt that comes from his letter from a Birmingham jail where he was jailed for protesting and organizing activism. And he has this beautiful reflection on our common humanity and our interconnection. I think it not only is fitting in the wake of Martin Luther King Day, and it's not only fitting with what we're going to be talking about today, but this also very much speaks to what's happening right now in our country. So I share this, and I hope that you maybe take some moments to take this in. He says all mankind is tied together. All life is interrelated, and we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of identity. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Today, we're going to talk about that interrelated structure and that inescapable network of mutuality. We've been in this series called Walking Each Other Home, drawn from the Ram Dass quote, where he says, right, quite verbatim, we're all walking each other home. We know this at this point. And yet I think that that quote, we're all walking each other home, is also kind of saying the same thing that Martin Luther King is saying, that we're on this journey together. And my well being is tied up in your well being, right? Your ability to finish the race and cross the finish line is tied up in mine. And last week in the last few weeks, really, we've been beginning this conversation about what is it like to be on this journey. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's messy. But this week, we're really going to focus on what it means to be on this journey together with each other and what part do we play in each other's walk of life. Now, something that I've recognized maybe in myself is that this can be really hard. It can be hard to be on a journey in which we're relying on each other because sometimes people are just a little difficult. I heard this thing the other day. Maybe you relate to it, maybe you don't. But I've heard that there's two kinds of people. You're like, already this is bad, right? We don't like to do that. But two kinds of people. There's two kinds of people. There's people that maybe look at humanity as a whole in the abstract, right? And you're cynical about humanity. Okay. You're like, I don't know about humanity. But then you're like, I love people though. You know what I'm talking about? Right? And then you might be on the other side of the spectrum where you're like, I'm actually pretty optimistic about humanity, but I don't really like people. Anyone kind of understand what I'm talking about? Okay. All right, not just me, thankfully. I'll give you an example of how this shows up in my life. Like I do feel optimistic about humanity. I do feel like I know we're going through so much. I know that we have a lot of struggles, but I also look at the journey that we've been on for millions of years and what we've overcome and the love and care and innovation that we're capable of. And I have hope still. But then sometimes I'm on an airplane and the airplane lands, and immediately everyone gets up and tries to fill the aisle as if that's going to help them get home quicker, right? They think, oh, I'm just going to be able to cut in front of 10 rows. And I'm like, I don't know about people though. You know what I mean? I've not given up hope on humanity, right? I'm still, that's part of why I'm here. I'm still believing in what we can do as human beings and our capacity for love. And then sometimes I'll be driving behind someone and they don't use their blinker. And I'm like, I don't know about people, okay? If we're being honest, sometimes this whole others thing can be the hardest part of the human journey. And yet it's also the most rewarding. We look at the world today, we look at so many of the difficult things going on in our country right now, and we realize that on some level, our greatest potential lies in our ability to find that sense of unity and connection, even in our differences. And yet, this is also the part where we most struggle. This is the results of all that we're seeing is really our inability to find that sense of connection, right? To see ourselves in the other. And so it's so important. It's so important. It's something that we try to do here in this community. We try to model it. We try to experience it, that sense of belonging, that sense of connection. This past week, we've been really reflecting as a community on who we are and where we're going. We had our annual meeting on Wednesday, which is a little bit more of an opportunity for us to talk to the community about what's going on, what's our vision for the year, what's our budget, what's all the organizational stuff, but really, what are we doing in 2026? And then yesterday, our leadership team got together. We have an annual leadership team retreat where we just take a minute, we ground ourselves, and we think, what does Aldea mean to us? What does Aldea mean to so many other people? Where are we going as a community in 2026? And what do we need as a community in 2026? And as each of the leadership team were able to share their stories and share their heart for this community, there was a word that seemed to arise and bubble up above all the rest as a key word for us this year. And that word is connection. That for us, we found that all of the things that happen at Aldea that bring community, that bring belonging, that we find value and inspiration, and they all seem to revolve around this idea of connection, being connected to one another, being connected to ourselves and something larger than ourselves. Do we sense this, that connection is seemingly is central to what happens here at Aldea, right? Do we feel this way? So we're going to be using that word more and really seeing how that finds its way into every part of that spiritual experience. But I also realize that when it comes to being connected here at Aldea, that different people have different experiences of that, different layers of connection. Maybe you're someone who primarily you come on a Sunday, that's your way of feeling connected, and maybe that's kind of what it looks like for you. And yet I would say that there's something about being in a room full of others who are grounding themselves in the same moment as you, right? We're taking breaths together, we're calming our nervous system together, we're reflecting on things and resonating about different themes together in real time. And there's something as simple and as powerful about being in this room that every single time we gather, that for this hour, we are a community. And there's something so powerful about that and the solidarity and being seen in that alone. But maybe you've taken a step beyond that. Maybe you've shown up to a small group or you've made some friends, you've been to lunch or coffee with someone from this community, and maybe taking that additional step allowed you to feel seen, heard, and held on an even deeper level. Or maybe you've gone beyond that and you would say that the people that you've met here in this community have become like family to you. They're the people that you'd call in any kind of situation of need. Maybe at Aldea, you met the person that if you went to jail, they would be your one phone call, right? That could be very well be true. Maybe you're out there and Aldea doesn't necessarily check any of those boxes, but you recognize the need for community in our world, in our lives. You recognize that, and this is really going to be what we're honing in on today, the title of today's message. You recognize that we go further together than we could go alone. Right? So we're going to call today Further Together. You've heard that phrase, we go fast alone, we go further together. And I believe that really this journey of life, this walk that we're on, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I found this true of any time that I go hiking with someone else, that I'm able to go further than I would on my own. I get a little braver when I'm with other people. I'm able to sort of move past my physical discomfort because I'm distracted by the conversation, or just being with other people can energize me. And if I'm being really honest, sometimes when I'm hiking with another person, I'm showing off a little bit, right? I'm like, I'm fine. I'm not tired at all. I'm not breathing heavy. I'm good, right? And so being with other people can help me go further than I possibly would go on my own. And so this is true for life. This is true of our spiritual journeys. And so I want to just take some time today and reflect on the ways that this shows up for us, that we can go further together. And the first is this: we can't walk for each other, but we can walk with each other. Right? We can't do it for one another, but we can be there in solidarity alongside one another. There are things in life that we do not want to do. And sometimes we wish that other people could do these things for us. They could stand in for us. I'm going to list some professions or some industries that have actually been built around the idea of doing something that someone else does not want to do. In Japan, there is a job known as a professional apologizer. So if you do not want to make an apology, you can pay someone to do it for you. There's such a thing as placeholder workers. So sometimes an empty office, they want to make it seem more thriving. And so they'll fill up a bunch of desks with people doing nothing but pretending like they're doing something in order to make an office look full. Placeholder workers, that's a job. There's such a thing as professional line standers. Okay, you don't want to stand in a line, you want to pay someone to do it for you. Lastly, I think this is maybe the worst, is you can pay someone to do the messages for you on your dating app, right? So they're just dating for you. I know, I feel the same way. There are things in life that we wish others could do for us. But the reality is that when it comes to our spiritual journey and our life path, no one can stand in for us, but they can stand with us. No one can do your journey or your walk for you, but they can do it alongside you. We're all in different places of life. We all have different needs. And yet it's important to remember that we are never alone. There's an interesting example of this. It's a new trend. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm interested in it. Okay. It's this new trend. It's called admin party or admin night. And basically what it is that we all have different things that we've been putting off that are really boring, that are kind of like administrative tasks, right? Like taxes are coming up and you're probably, if you're like me, you're going to put that off quite a while, and you have different things that you just need to do, right? Forms you need to fill out, things you need to, numbers you need to balance, whatever. And we all, am I the only one who procrastinates ever? Okay, right. So we put these things off, right? And yet part of it is that we just feel so alone. And so the idea of an admin party and an admin night is you and all your friends who have similar stuff they have to do, not the same stuff, but similar type of stuff. You all get together, right? You order food, you put on some music, and you all tackle these unwanted tasks, but you do it not being alone. You do it in solidarity. Does anyone sound like they would try this maybe? Yeah, I like it. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it. Here's the idea, friends. We can't fix the problems of another person, but we can offer presence. Friends, don't underestimate, let us not underestimate the power of solidarity. If we wanted to be reminded of the power of solidarity, look to Minneapolis, where tens of thousands of people stood in negative 15 degrees. I know a lot of us, yeah, I know some of us freaked out when we saw our weather forecast go below 60. Right? You have tens of thousands of people standing together in negative 15 degrees, not to fix, not to solve, but to say, I am here. I see you. I'm with you, to offer solidarity. And yet, solidarity is something we can also offer on a one to one basis as individuals to others as we walk alongside each other. How many of you have ever had a situation in your life where a friend or a companion came along and they could do nothing to fix or solve what you were going through, but they were there with you, and being with you made all the difference, right? Camus, the philosopher, once said, don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I may not lead. Walk beside me, just be my friend. Friends, as we walk, it's not our responsibility to give answers, right? To fix everything for another. How much we wish that we could do that, right? How much I wish that I could stand up here and looking at the state of the world, how much I wish I could say something that would solve or fix even one iota of it for each other. But really, what we offer to one another is to be friends, right? To listen, to be vulnerable, to be authentic. And yet there's something so powerful about presence. See, presence is not about being perfect. I don't need to show up and fix someone else's problems, right? And that requires so much pressure to be perfect. How can I be everything for another person? Presence just means I need to show up, right? And that takes so much pressure off. That takes all the pressure off of needing to be something that I'm not. And it reminds me all I need to do is stand with you and walk alongside you. Friends, we lean on one another because we know that one day we're going to need to lean on someone, right? We walk arm in arm, and some days I'm going to need to put my weight on you. Some days you're going to need to put your weight on me. We do it because we understand we've been there before. I want to give an example of this, and it comes from the world of choir. If there's any choir people out there, and I butcher this example, just shh, okay? Don't. I'm doing my best. I'm not the pro, so you can just keep it to yourself. Talk to me later. But I want to give this example. This comes from a choir, and in choir, there's such a thing called staggered breathing. And what staggered breathing is it allows a choir to sing a note for an indefinite amount of time, because some of the choir might be singing the note and others are ready in the wings to take it up for them when they have run out of breath. So someone's singing the note, then they run out of breath, someone else steps in to sing the note, and the transition is seamless, and they can sort of do this in such a circular way that the note is always being held. People are just dropping in and out. Now, I want to make this example a little more real for us. So do you think we could do a little singing today? Yes? Anyone? Okay. We did it in first service, and I think you could beat them. And I think I'm sorry, but making things a competition always tends to be a motivator. So I think you can do a better job of them. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sing a note, and then I'm gonna have one side of the room. I'm gonna have my right, the left side of the room. I'll point, and this side will sing this note. Then we're gonna go over, and when it seems like this side is out of breath, we're going to go to this side, and we're going to go back and forth and see that we can sustain this note. If you're in the back, you can kind of find yourself on one or the other side. And then when we're done, I'm going to go like this because I want to feel like a maestro, you know? So um, let's just get the note for a second. Okay. Okay, good. You got the note. So here we go. We're going to start left side of the room, my right, and we're going to start with you, and then we're going to go back and forth. You ready? Okay. Mm, mm. Got to remember to take your breath when it's the other group's turn. Good job, everyone. I think you did. I think you did better than the first service. The idea here, though, is it's a picture of interdependence, right? We don't always have to carry the note of life, right? Of the work that we're doing, of the community that we're in. We don't always have to carry the note because we know that others are holding it for us. The idea is that in community, in the interdependence of life, the note keeps going because if I need to drop out for a moment, someone else can take my place. And if I have a full lungs, right, then I know that I can stand in for someone else because they've done it for me. This is interdependence. This is solidarity. This is the mutuality of recognizing that I thrive when you thrive and vice versa. And this takes me to the second point. We walk ourselves home by walking each other home. We walk ourselves home by walking each other home. Activist and philosopher Paulo Freire puts it this way: no one liberates anyone else, and no one liberates themselves alone. People liberate themselves in communion. I want to give another example that I think illustrates this. It's almost like a loop, a circle, that when I give, I receive. When I help to liberate someone else, I'm really liberating or loving myself. And so this next example is about electricity. Now, if you're an electrician out there, okay, and you listen to my example and you're like, that's totally wrong, just shh, okay, just I may offend both the choir world and the electrician world in one message, which is not, I was not anticipating doing that. But the idea here is that for something like for power to be given to something, for energy to be giving something, for a battery to power something, there is a circuit that is created. So if a battery, let's say, is powering a light bulb, okay, power comes from the battery and it goes to the light bulb, but there has to be a circuit completing a full circle back to the battery, hence the plus and minus side of the battery, or else the light bulb does not give light. And so essentially, a circuit is a closed loop. Some of you are like, I'm not an electrician, and I still know that example did not work at all. But no, the idea is that life, love, community, it operates like a loop or like a circuit. How many of us have found that the more you give, the more you get back, right? Or the more you love, the more you receive. I'll give an example of how this shows up in my life. Like, I feel so honored and privileged to be able to stand up here and to share and to have these conversations. But I promise you, friends, that what you bring to me, what you reflect back to me, the conversations that you and I have, or even what you're giving to me in this room right now, that I feel like I get 10 times whatever I'm giving up here. That so many days I feel like I am the student. And this is something that's studied, that we kind of know that even on a neurological level, that we learn best when we teach or when we share an idea to another. But I think this really is how this shows up in our lives, that when we love someone else, we're getting all of that back, right? That I can only love myself by loving you. I can only serve myself by serving you. How many of us have found this to be true in our spheres, right? When you love another, when you hold space for another, when you share kindness, when you give generosity, it comes back to you. And it comes back to us in a way that we can't fully understand. It's the beautiful mystery of this world that we're in, right? That despite what we sometimes are led to believe, that we are in an abundant and loving reality where the more we give, the more we get. I can't explain it, but I feel it in my bones. And I find that the best place to practice this, the best place to build our faith on this, is with each other, right? Within our relationships, in our communities, right? The power of love, of service, of giving to each other, of showing up for each other. That when I walk alongside you, I am walking alongside myself. I'm holding me as I hold you. Just think about how much you get when you give, right? Next time you're in a situation where you have an opportunity to be generous, you have an opportunity to be kind even when it's difficult, you have an opportunity to stand next to someone without fixing their problems, but just being with them, and notice how, in some way, you are receiving every ounce of love that you're giving, if not more. I just encourage you to try to pay attention to that. Because as Albert Schweitzer said, the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. What a beautiful paradox, right? That when we let go of our own self-fulfilling need and we think about how we can bless another, that's actually when we find the happiness that we're looking for. That's actually when we find the freedom and we find the liberation. This is hard though, if we're being honest. When it comes to this idea of serving or being in a relationship with another, this can be one of the most difficult parts of life, because the reality is, and this will be my final point for today, in every each other, there's an other. What I mean more specifically is, if we're going to talk about walking each other home, we don't want to forget the other part. As humanity, we are far more alike than we so often give ourselves credit for. There are so many experiences of being human that are universal, but at the same time, we are all so incredibly unique and diverse. It's a paradox. It's a paradox that we seem to live right down the middle. We live at that center point between knowing that we're all so much more connected and alike than we realize, but also we're all individuals with individual perspectives and stories and ways of experiencing the world. And so anytime you're in relationship or friendship or community. Remember that there are differences because that person is always going to be a mystery to you. That person has an interior life that you could not possibly fully understand. That's okay. That's not the requirement here. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, understanding someone else is not a matter of seeing them clearly, but of recognizing that they, like you, are a mystery. Can we start by just acknowledging our differences? Not as a problem, but as actually what makes any of this possible. Right? If you and I are not unique on some level and experiencing the world from different vantage points, then how can I lean on you? Right? How can I serve or be served by you if not for the fact that we are an other? So it's not a defect, right? But it is difficult. It is certainly difficult. And it's our differences that make things sometimes the most uncomfortable in our lives and in our world. Unless your main form of communication is a rotary phone and a vacuum tube radio, you probably have recognized that our world has a lot of struggle with differences lately. I'll say it again. Rotary phone and vacuum tube radio. Anyone? Anybody? Okay. Sorry. I looked up. I was like, what would be a good example of a radio vacuum tube radio? I'm like, that's cool. That's cool, right? In our world, this is seems to be our greatest struggle, how we relate to one another, how we relate to the other, how we can coexist and even find unity and harmony amongst differences. And yet the same is true anywhere people gather. The same is true in any community. Friends, in this community, because anytime you have community, anytime there is a group of people, there is the possibility to grow through the differences, right? Not being defeated by them, but growing through them. In 1965, a psychologist named Bruce Tuckman developed a framework for how groups and communities develop and grow. He called this forming, storming, norming, and performing. Is anyone familiar with this? All right, someone out there taught me this, so I know they're familiar with this. But the idea is this: a group forms, a group comes together, and there's a certain understanding and expectation of what that group or community is. But ultimately, along the way, right? If we're all being human and we're all being authentic, conflict arises. Different opinions of how to do things show up. People are people. We're different. We're unique. We're not going to move through life without conflict, and we're not going to move through common goals without a sense of things getting a little shaky and messy from time to time. So that's storming, right? But then if you can move through that, then perhaps what you find on the other side is a new set of norms, a new set of practices and understanding of what the group is about that actually came through, not in spite of the storms, but through the storms, right? It gave you a wider, more inclusive lens on things. And if you can move through that, then ultimately you end up at performing, which means you are actually being and living out what this community or group was meant to be. But what I find so essential and interesting about this framework is that the storming is so crucial. It's not to be avoided or turned away from, but it's to be recognized as essential to the process. The storms are where the growth happens. Tuckman says storming is inevitable when people care enough to be honest. How many of you have been through some storms in your relationships? You've been through some storms in community, right? There have been plenty of storms at Aldea, and I anticipate more because we're all caring enough to be authentic. I know for me, as a lifelong people pleaser, the storms can be really, really difficult. And it's hard for me to step into a storm, to step into conflict, to step into difference, and still feel like I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm alive. It's like we feel this as a threat. But I've also come to learn that it's when we can step into the storm, those are the moments where sometimes the greatest trust is built. Those are the moments where two people who might disagree on something really strongly still develop a deep respect for each other. These are the moments where sometimes we get such clarity on what's important that our values are affirmed more than ever. So, friends, may we not fear the storms. May we see the storms as part of this process. We are a community of people where we value diversity, diversity of belief, diversity of thought. That means that when it comes to what's going on in our world, we're not all going to think exactly alike. And if that kind of group exists, then that means that conflict is inevitable. But it doesn't have to be a problem. It can be a result of a group of authentic people. And I think that the world desperately needs spaces like this where we can be together, united in our diversity, united in our differences, not in fear of conflict, but recognizing what it can lead to. Not erasing what makes us unique, embracing it, even if it's uncomfortable. Friends, I'm not asking you to change how you think about a certain situation. I'm asking you to have courage to sit at the table with someone who may view it differently than you, to offer them understanding, right, and the space to be held. Parker Palmer was a theologian. He said, an authentic community is one in which we are free to bring the whole of who we are and know that it will be received. That maybe I can only be fully free to be myself if you are too. Because I know that that's the kind of community that I want. That's the kind of community I want to build here. And we all need to know that we are free to show up as our full selves. And that means offering it to the person in front of us or next to us. Friends, we don't go further together in spite of our differences or our otherness. We do it because of our differences or our otherness. Because those are the very things that pull us out of our comfort zones. Those are the very things that cause us to lead with our hearts rather than our heads. Those are the very things that remind us that I can only be my truest, authentic self if you can too, despite our uniqueness. So, friends, as we continue this series of walking each other home, may we remember that while we cannot stand in for another, we can always stand by and stand with. We make space for each other, knowing that when I love you, I love myself. When I serve you, I serve myself. And that, friends, is especially true amidst the storms of life. I want to just close with something that I haven't really done, but I think is just important to reflect on. I'd like to make a bit of a practice of it because I've been thinking, every time we get together, right, specifically even for our service right now, like 10:45, right, this group of people right now on this date, on this time, that this room and this exact group of people, there can never be a duplicate, right? We will never repeat this exact arrangement of people again. I did the math. Okay? And I found that if you were to take our group, right, the amount of people that are in this room right now, and you were to try to find the likelihood of us having this exact same group of people together again, like how many possibilities of arrangements of people there could be, right, just within our community, right? And there's more possibilities than there are grains of sand on this planet. So the likelihood that all of exactly this room is going to be in exactly this arrangement is virtually zero. And I just found that to be so beautiful because when we're talking about community, there's something so powerful about that. So I just want to invite you, if you feel comfortable, to close your eyes as we close today. And we recognize how special and precious and fleeting this moment is. That this community that we have built for this hour is like a snowflake or like a fingerprint. It'll never happen again. And that makes it beautiful. And as we reflect on the specialness of this moment now, we also reflect on perhaps the things that arose for us in today's music and meditation and conversation that arose for us as perhaps some of the most meaningful. Something that showed up for me, whether it be a phrase or an image or a thought that I want to hold on to and bring into my life moving forward. And in this moment, I just invite that insight to crystallize. I invite it to imprint on my heart so that I can carry it with me as I walk out these doors today. And I find gratitude for my own self for showing up today in my fullest self. And I find gratitude for the others who are walking along with me home in this room today.